Hello, and welcome to Content Talks, a podcast all about content marketing. I'm your host, Luna. I'm a freelance writer and editor, but in a past life, I was a content marketer myself. Now, I talk to some of the most exciting and innovative professionals in the industry to bring you their expert tips, inspiring stories, and strategic insight within the world of communications, marketing, and sales. Today, I'm talking to Jonathan Wuurman, a marketing leader based in Belgium. Jonathan has over 15 years of experience in SaaS marketing, currently serving as the Vice President of Growth at Luzmo. You'll hear all about international content marketing, like how to get started, how to avoid common pitfalls, and how to scale your content globally in a human and sustainable way. Let's jump right in. Jonathan, welcome to Content Talks.
Thank you for the invitation, Luna.
So to get us started, could you just briefly tell us a little bit about yourself, your role, and your company, Luzmo?
Yeah, sure. Jonathan, nearly 44, so getting in the OG mode. I'm in SaaS for nearly 20 years now. My role at Luzmo, what's in the name at the end, I would say, is VP Growth, or consider it as VP Marketing. It's probably between those lines. I try to define myself more as a connector, trying to bridge basically marketing, sales, CS, and product, and making the best out of this so that our market can find us, can see what we offer them, and we offer basically embedded analytics. Long story short, I try to help companies leverage the data that they have so that they can deliver awesome experience to their client, which means basically better adoption, better retention, more sales. Everybody is happy at the end of the day.
I know a little bit about what you are talking about because it's a little bit like the flywheel system, right?
It's the idea behind it, of course. Yes.
Yeah. I used to work in HubSpot, so the flywheel was like they talked about it every day. So yeah, it's important to have that connector, which is your, right? What you are.
Been trained a lot by the content of HubSpot, to be honest. I remember when I was more a sales guy, they already had that kind of link between SDR and account executive. And so I remember then one of those VP sales said, hey, we need to flip this. And how did they flip that? Is by making commission also associated to that. So SDR that were booking meetings were getting money, but if there was no closing and that the client was churning within a year, they didn't get full potential of the bonus. And so this was for me already a first move, like you need to break silos. Everybody should be at the same level and work towards basically one person, which is the customer, in my opinion. I'm always saying customer-centric is a lovely word, but it's damn hard to do.
That's true. And how do you see the role of marketing within that ecosystem?
I think marketing has probably the advantage and the disadvantage from not being into sales. Sales will be very hard, getting new revenue, closing deals. At the opposite, marketing is there to provide the leads, and that can be some kind of complex conversation sometimes between MQL, SQL, sales accepted lead, just find out. So I think that's like the challenge. But at the opposite, we also have that lovely role where we can provide assets. I think marketing or product marketing is very close to something that is, I think, getting like hype at the moment is sales enablement. It's basically what can marketing provide to customer success, sales, and product to enable the sales, to enable client satisfaction, conversion, So we have basically the mediums and the pressure of it. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I agree. So Luzmo is an international company, right? You operate in a lot of different markets.
Exactly. We have clients at least in more than 40 countries.
So that also means that keeping all of the different sectors of a company in lockstep, that means that you also have to do that on an international level, right?
Exactly. Which is a real challenge because I think this goes back to a foundation layer of every company, which is culture. Yes. And we are Flemish company. So, even in Belgium, it's complex because we have 3 languages, 3 governments and everything. So I think we are born with that kind of challenge, dilemma as a Belgium company. We say in French, for example, de compromis, always finding like the middle ground in everything. We are used to this. So yes, I think that's part of the challenge when you go to US, which will definitely be a very different approach to the market, to making sales and marketing, that what you can have in Belgium or in the UK, the Netherlands, just call out. But yes, definitely a challenge.
And just for those who don't know, can you just quickly tell us what international content marketing is and why you think it's important for a company like yours?
Yeah, so I think we talk a lot about intent data, personalization as the core of everything. If you take that as the starting point of what we try to explain over here, talking in the language of your market is the first step of personalization, in my opinion. It's very good that today I can probably find a lot of data around Luna, what you like, what you dislike, what you were posting on social media, and have a very good vision of you. But I think the first step is talking the language of Luna, which can, in your case, be more content marketing. At Lusmo, it's talking the language of the product teams, so slightly technical sometimes, but maybe not for all of them. And so finding that middle ground. And add to that, us from Belgium also talking in the language of your client. Speaking French to French market, speaking English to English market. But it's a process and you don't build that from day one. At Lusmo today, we have very dedicated content to the product team. So I think we understand very well our personas within the organizations and we try to help them as much as we can. Research, surveys, testimonials that speak to them as product team. But we added French because we notice, and that's really a good example to do, is take your ads, and most of the people will make all their ads in English because it's easy. You can stream that in a much faster way on the Google network and just go on. The performance of it in France, if you do English, it's not bad. It's catastrophic. It's really, wow. We did a quick test and it's really easy. Take it, drop it in any kind of translating tool and try to shoot that same ad with French copy. And you will see your performance probably doubling. And again, that is, in my opinion, a first step to experiment content internationalization from the persona aspect, but also from the language aspect. And if I pull this up to Actito, and Actito was more a CRM platform, consider the HubSpot, but B2B2C, that was what we were doing. We end up with a website in Flemish, in Dutch, because in Belgium, Flemish is slightly different from the Netherlands. We noticed that on content such as blog article, testimonials, the fact that we were using the same wording that they were using in their own markets, it improved the time. And time, in my understanding of content, although I'm not an expert at all over here, happy to be challenged by your community as well. Time on the blog article is for me maybe even as important as the conversion of it, because that means that we were doing good stuff. And so we end up with Flemish, Dutch. We had the same for French because we were present in Canada, east side of Canada. You know that in Canada, you may not use any English words, not a single one. So you cannot use the powered by, for example. It's illegal. So you get sued for those kind of things. So I remember building a boot and I had powered by and we had to put a sticker on it to hide it during that fair trade because you may really not do that. So you have to translate everything to French. That was a huge gap for us because even for us in France and Belgium, you would use English words that are part of the daily vocabulary of the product managers. But in the Quebec, no way, you may not do this. And so that is how we started running basically plays. And we end up with a wide variety of languages, to be honest. Like Spanish. You will start Spanish and then you see something pretty crazy happening. I was purely operating in Europe at that moment. We saw South America leads coming in because that content was discovered by those guys and they were engaging with it. And so for us, we started having clients at that time in Chile, Peru. And I was like, but how is this possible? It was just bracket, because we were pushing also that content in a native way to Spanish, not just a hard translation, which doesn't bring value.
Yeah, I am from Brazil, so I know how the South American markets work. But for example, I think if you had done that in Portugal, a Brazilian audience wouldn't have responded to it.
Probably.
Spanish from Spain is very different from Spanish from South America as well. So I don't know how I wouldn't be able to compare how different it is as opposed to Brazilian Portuguese and European Portuguese. But for us, if someone were trying to sort of get Brazilian leads, but using European Portuguese, it wouldn't work. We would just basically make fun of it.
I think over here, what happened probably, and it's an assumption, I think South America was not willing to buy from you, American companies. And so they gave us the credit for being European with data privacy or way of running business, which is definitely different. And probably because we did that effort to translate to Spanish, we got the credit back. Why I think it also performed that well. Of course, there are a lot of things like SEO, blah, 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 that you can like make good technical foundation to be seen by those crawlers. And I don't know how technical we want to go, but I think what we had here, we use local people to upgrade the quality of the content.
Yeah.
So the process is pretty simple. Take any kind of translation tool out there. They're 80% good.
Yeah.
But the native person, you sniff it like hell that it's a Google Translate or just call whatever they've been using to translate it, even ChatGPT. You can feel it as a native person that this has been run by a robot. But what we did, the country manager of Spain was reviewing every single piece of content.
Mm-hmm.
And what was amazing with that, he was training us at the end. He said, this word should rather be this because that's like the slight difference in the wording that people will understand. And we were building a kind of glossary for our own translations.
So I want to go back a little bit to the beginning of your content strategy at Luzmo. And I wanted to ask you, when did you realize that the company needed an international strategy for your content marketing?
I wasn't there. So I can only talk from what I knew because I was a client of Luzmo before being here. There was an amazing lady in this company called Mika, which was employee 5, I think. So Luzmo already from the origin understood the value of having marketing within a very tech company. And Luzmo got the opportunity 5, 6 years ago to go to New York and to open a hub over there. And Mika went to live in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is how our internationalization, the fact that we were understanding different angles of approaching content was happened for Luzmo. Because you bombard the lady that built the foundation layer for your content strategy in Europe, you take her and you put her in a flight with your VP sales to open a market which is drastically different from Europe. I think that was the way that it happened. You know, it's in the weeds that you need to build it, and that's how it happened. And then it was injected in the DNA of the company from day one.
Yeah, and also Americans tend to be a little bit insular. They just like focus a lot on their own market, which is like, you know, it's a huge country, but still they aren't always with that like international first perspective in their marketing, whereas in Europe it kind of goes without saying, because indeed, like, you have Belgium, which is a tiny country, but then you are already so close to the Netherlands, to France, to Germany, and you have Spain, you have Italy, you have like already like all of these countries that are here, and like everybody is sort of already communicating with each other in a way. And it would be kind of a waste even like for a European company to not be European and to just be like set up in their own country.
To your point of US, I think you're right. And, you know, there's a very transactional kind of approach because they're the best sales guys on earth. I love to say when I go to US, Americans can sell you the worst cappuccino on earth. In my opinion, it's the worst cappuccino on earth, but everybody say it's an amazing cappuccino.
Yeah.
People that went to Italy that drink a real cappuccino would never consider a Starbucks cappuccino as a great cappuccino, but those guys managed to make that.
I would say the same about pizza. Like, they are trying to convince the entire world that they have the best pizza. They're like, oh, New York pizza is amazing. Or no, Chicago pizza is better. We have the best pizza in the world. And we're over here like, you ever been to Italy?
Yeah. You see, and that is what we need to give to US.
Yeah.
US are extremely good at sales.
If you're enjoying this conversation, don't forget to follow Content Talks on Spotify and YouTube and leave us a review. It really helps other listeners find us. Now let's get back to the episode. We were talking a little bit before about American companies going to Europe and just companies expanding into different markets. For Luzmo, you mentioned that it was a more organic process, that you opened the office in New York. How do you think a company should decide, like, when it's time to go international, if they stay local? Like, do they have the resources to tackle this new stage?
Very good question. Will be my personal take on it. Don't do it alone. I think in a world today where you have access to expertise, experience, some support from your country. We were part of the Belgium chamber in New York, giving us, you know, somebody over there that deeply understands the local way of doing, that can introduce. You can try to understand as much as you want the US mentality. We will never be US people.
Yes.
and vice versa.
It's true, like that each of these countries are going to have different cultures, different languages, economies, expectations, and all of that is going to play a part into how you develop an international strategy. But I think it's still important, like for the business to stay true to themselves. So like how can they foster trust with these new markets, but still stay true to their values and to their culture?
It's again a very American thing, but I have a tendency to believe that the word culture mission statement is totally underinvested by most of the companies in Europe. It's something that we stick on the wall, that looks good, that you give in your new employee kit. You have 3 slides about it, blah, blah, blah. And it stays there. It's not like a mantra.
Yeah.
To the opposite, the Americans, they have that culture of the performance, of, impossible doesn't exist. We can always be better. And so it's a kind of brainwashing. I'm not sure it's a good thing. There is probably something in the middle where the right level is, but you have to give them that they're really good at it.
Yeah, it's probably healthier if you build a middle ground, right? That like the culture of the company is ingrained into your strategy and into everything you do, but that you don't need to burn out your employees by doing that. And you need to realize that they're also human beings who exist outside of that company. So just as a quick follow-up to that, how do you balance global brand consistency with local relevance?
I think your brand should be the same everywhere. Your positioning, your messaging, your core values shouldn't be adapted locally because it's so deep in you. It's trying not to be you. If it doesn't resonate in a market that you try to sell to, I would say your first call should be, let's not go to that market.
Yeah, good point.
First of all. Now, to the local approach that you want to have, I think you can tweak things to be more tangible for local markets. And it's very easy today to build some blog articles where it would be about show and tell and those kind of things, and just make those pieces of content accessible for specific markets. So I think the technology allow you easily today to have this made for a specific market. And you keep your core DNA in it, but you adapt it to the local.
I would also add that I think empathy and humility are important when going into other markets, research them, see things their way, put yourselves in their shoes, and like, don't assume that the way things are done in your country is the right way. It's just different.
100%. For me, empathy and curiosity are probably the most underrated skills when we hire people.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%. I would rather have somebody that I feel it's deeply curious about AI and what it's capable to offer, that somebody that had a PhD from Boston, Massachusetts, just to say something. I remember that I had a meeting very long time ago in Boston with the guys of Adobe. Adobe was definitely a competitor of Actito at that time. And again, Belgium company, multilingual interface, multilingual customer was part of what we consider as a normality. And I will always remember, I start pitching our platform and I say, and so we can talk in all the language of the client instead of building an email in French and other languages, you can directly translate in the interface. And the guy look at me, but like with that kind of vibe that says, what are you saying? And I say, I see that you don't agree, but I will directly address it. I think you in America are so focused on your own belly that you don't see the opportunities of your own market. The guy start really getting a bit red and like, whoa, pay attention at what you will say next. Yeah. I was like, my CEO was next to me. I say, I will need to find a job probably after this. And I say, we just landed in Boston. All the boards in the airport were bilingual, English and Spanish. So basically, you tell me that you don't care about more than 30-40% of your market. You don't want to talk in this language. The guy looked at me like, very well done, had the thumb up, continue now. Just to show what you said, you start with assumptions, but you need to be open to be challenged on your assumptions. But I think it's still important to be bold enough and to stick to your line long enough before changing also your opinion. Because otherwise you keep change, and you don't build what we said before. What is your DNA? What is your mission statement? You shouldn't move to that line. My line here was, we are delivering value at the customer of our customer. And those customers care about reading their content in Spanish or in English, depending on their native language.
Yeah, that was a great story. And I think it's so true that it's a missed opportunity really to like approach your content strategy with a position of like condescension, basically, towards your customer base. And I think that would be like a common mistake that happens a lot. What do you think are some other pitfalls of international content marketing that you see people make all the time?
I think to your point, I wouldn't see it as a mistake, if I may challenge that, but as a missed opportunity, which is even worse, in my opinion, because you cannot mistaken by saying that you build your content in English first. It's the language of the business. So if you have to make a first bet, should always be English first. But it's definitely a missed opportunity to not provide it in Dutch, French for Belgium, for example, for the simple reason that it's you providing yourself an advantage edge to be closer to your market, to be more connected to your market than anybody else. To your other question, where do I see as a lot of mistakes that we do? It's a bit what you said. It's believing that we know better than the market. But I like to slightly fade that down in the sense it's very hard to have customer input. I don't know if you run surveys or NPS. So NPS Net Promoter Score, you send an email, give me a score from 0 to 10, or fill in this lovely customer survey about your satisfaction with 20 questions in there. First of all, it's really hard to make those people fill that in.
True.
Most of the time, it's an afterthought for most of those people. They just did it by drinking their coffee, looking at something else. So I could really assess the quality of the input that we're collecting over here. But I also think that if you don't provide conversations, people cannot express themselves.
What do you think are some other pitfalls in international content marketing?
That geo is the big thing that everybody should triple 50, put all their budget in. My personal call is if you did good SEO, you do good geo and AO.
If anyone doesn't know what that means, could you explain the acronyms?
If you use ChatGPT to ask what is the best analytics platform, you get that kind of resume out of it. That's geo AO. So in a nutshell, it's basically a summary that AI does based on multiple sources that provide that resume that people read, which bring people like you and me in the pain, because if people get the information there, they don't click on links anymore. So if they don't click on links, they don't end on my website. If they don't end on my website, they don't book a call with myself or do a trial. So we are all doomed because of geo and we will be out of business. That's what everybody tells you. The reality is we do care about those things. I'm not saying you shouldn't care about it, but to the point where I am a bit longer than a year at Lusmo, the job that Mika has been building during 9 years has put such a good foundational layer on our content optimization, answering the real question of the market. We are present in those without aiming for it. AI is trained to know what good looks like. And as soon as what you offer means good, this looks good, you're picked up. Again, getting back to answering the real questions of the market. So instead of trying to spend a lot of money in understanding which prompt Luna types in to find things, ask your clients, how would you approach this, or this in your market? And the last pitfall for you is, and I will double down on it, distribution/sales enablement is, in my opinion, worth for everything, internationalization or content strategy, because we don't do that enough. And I think we don't provide credit enough for people like you that spend hours researching, hours building things, not for having a blog article that I will push in a newsletter. If that's the usage that I do from the hard work from my content team, I would highly recommend my boss to fire me, because I'm not leveraging the work of my team. And I think that is definitely make sure that you leverage every single thing that your team do to the extreme.
That's true. That is a big part of basically every content strategy that I've ever been a part of. The refreshing, repurposing, and just auditing your content as well. And to talk again a little bit more about AI, what role do you think AI would play in international content?
I'm scared for translators, to be honest with you.
Me too.
I did use those guys pretty intensively in my previous company. We could totally skip that invoice line or that budget line by leveraging already at that time DeepL, Google Translate, and ChatGPT, and putting a human in the loop. So for translator, pretty scared, not sure about where. Now I think still those guys will need to reinvent. Again, very positive person. I think human beings have the ability to reinvent themselves much more than what we think. Where do I see AI? I see AI as a superpower of human. And you will have, in my opinion, probably two categories of people: the human enabled by AI and the human teed by AI. So for me, there is only one way. Embrace it, learn it, leverage it to your advantage, should be your mindset from day one. And that will make the winners of tomorrow. And I think the critical aspect will always be a human. We love to see AI as magic.
Yeah,
I think humans are magicians.
exactly.
AI is just an accessory of the
Exactly.
magician.
Yeah. It could be the magic wand, for instance.
For example, but it's an object. It's
Yeah,
it's it's not the
cool.
magician.
But okay, so I would like to move on to the quick fire round now. It's just like for short, pithy answers to these questions. So if you had to give one piece of advice to SaaS companies going global, what would it be?
Make sure that you have somebody from your team that moved to that market. So making sure that you have somebody that has a deep understanding of your core values from your DNA, that you ship in that market that you want to open, that is now Asia, US, or whatever, and bundle that person with the local person that will build that market for you. So it's a double answer over here. Somebody of your team should be going abroad, connecting with the local person, because that duo will maintain the value, the core elements, your culture, but you will also have that person adapting locally to the market because you have a local person. So you need that equation of two. It's like yin and yang.
Yeah. That person would be like an ambassador for your company in the.
Exactly.
Okay. What's one mistake that you see companies repeat again and again when going international?
Thinking that Google Translate does the job.
Okay. What's one market that you think is underestimated right now?
I think for Europeans, we still have very difficulties to go to Asia. It's not one market, it's tough for us to go there. I don't know a lot of European company that manage to have their internationalization on the east side, but more on the west side most of the time.
Yeah, that's a good point. If you had to start your international content from scratch tomorrow, what's the first thing you do?
I think it will really depend in which time of business I am and which market I would go for. But to your question, I would say I would always start my content English first, even if it's not the native language of my market. If my native market is the market and I want to sell to, make sure to have those languages as the second layer. And probably, but that's because I'm biased, I would definitely always add Spanish to any kind of internationalization, even if it's not the same Spanish in South America. I saw so good results in my previous company by addressing that market, which is probably a bit underestimated in its potential, because we always look as US as the next piece when you go out of Europe.
And finally, where could people reach you if they would like to stay in touch? Your social media, website, anything like that?
I'm a very social animal, so definitely my LinkedIn, and I guess that the link will be in the show notes. I do have one rule. It's from Monday to Friday. Weekends are meant for family, kids, and learning other things, but not running business. So for sure, lismo.com is always a good way also to interact with me.
Okay, great. So thank you so much, Jonathan. I really enjoyed our conversation. You had some amazing insights. I think it's going to make a great episode.
Again, thank you very much, Luna. To your audience, again, definitely not the content expert of the company, but somebody that really loves that topic deeply, sharing more my experience through it, bold opinions about things. If people want to challenge that and go deeper, again, LinkedIn comments, I will always be happy to answer those. Tell me if I'm wrong. I love to know when I'm wrong as well, because then I'm improving. And I think that's also the idea of a podcast, is having that follow-up of conversation. I think we touched base enough on distribution, sales enablement. So let's make this not only just a lovely conversation that we had. And thank you again, Luna.
Awesome. Thank you so much.